Hey everybody, Stu Smith here again with Jeff Nichols doing another tactical fitness report. Jeff, good to see you again, my friend.
It's good to see you, Stu. Honestly, like it's a, I always chuckle with my wife whenever we go on because I always remember the first time that I saw you in a conference and I mistook you for another Smith, and then in Orlando we had a good conversation, and then like all these years later we got like 100 of these conversations. So it's
Yeah,
be here.
that's really funny. Yeah, it has evolved. I think we both have evolved in what 12 years.
Yeah, for sure,
Significantly.
for
But
sure.
I wanted to bring you on because I know you and I both have seen this in our coaching, and that is finding someone or someone finds us who is really has a big desire to serve, but they are completely untrained. And there's a spectrum of untrained, right? Let's kind of go through a spectrum of untrained. There's people who have never worked out before, ever, and now want to serve. Okay.
Right,
There are people who might be a land athlete that college level um, D1 running back, right? But he's never swum before.
right.
Right, that's another, like, untrained medium that we have to deal with sometimes, and then there's the older guy who, um, might be trained in previous life, but, maybe has let some things go, but now is thinking about, you know what, he's got that itch and still wants to serve. So, maybe take this, like, discussion of training the untrained and kinda think about it on that spectrum of of how I kinda look at untrained people, but they all have the same level of heart and want to serve, and at least their mindset is there to want to serve. Um, so let's just start with the the young or old person who hasn't ever trained before. How do we build a foundation on them and get them ready for what's to come,
Yeah.
regardless of what's to come?
Right, right. And I think that that's a bit of an unknown for some of them, which is why they're in that position. And I agree. It's like this is not a question of someone's character or unwillingness or devotion to service, like because that isn't exclusive to the 18-year-old male or female, right?
Sure.
So we could just say someone because we, like I said, we both get them in some sort of untrained value, and the one in particular we could talk about is like older or younger, but really doesn't have a physical baseline. Really hasn't. They've weren't physically active in sports as a kid. And again, that's not a buzzkill because like we have some good skateboarders and things. So I'm talking
Oh
like
yeah.
the kid that let's just say that this kid, because this is usually what it is they're have a good intellect, like they're smart, they're what we
Right.
call intelligent, book smart. But and that maybe was their point of focus through school is like getting good grades and that was it served them great and then it's like oh I want to go do this thing and so for me I think that like we always say first is establishing a good timeline based on where they're physically at and so it's like that's why we have psts essentially is right to give that initial broad stroke of where are you kind of at physically and big picture stuff, you know, upper body lower body strength and endurance and things. And so that's the first thing is and that's kind of where age might come in is like if they're really young, great, man. If they're really committed, well, then setting that foundation really is a great place to do some good calisthenics, you know, play, be active, like play basketball, go, you know, run trails, do all those sort of things. Cause at 18, 19, 20, 25, you really didn't miss the boat. There's plenty of
Oh
time,
no. Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that's the big thing is first is and a lot of these guys too is like they may not have met someone like you or I that like not just a former SEAL, but are teaching it and saying, hey, honestly, like I know you have this gusto, but you may have missed the age window. So you
Hmm.
might want to even shift away from the military and focus on potentially law enforcement or some other agency. So having that honest talk
Yeah.
based on where they're at physically and helping them establish a timeline. That would be kind of my first
Yeah,
tip.
I agree with you. I think one of my favorite sayings is if you're not assessing, you're just guessing, right? So go through a full gamut of assessment. You and I've had a couple of discussions on the assessments of the tactical athlete. where we actually test their strength and their power and their speed, their agility, their muscle stamina and endurance, and flexibility, mobility, and their grip. All of those are elements that they're going to be needing, not only in their job, but just to get accepted into their job, depending on the specifics of their fitness test. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The number one thing is to assess. And then from that assessment, say, just from my experience, I've seen people be fully prepared within the next year, next 8 months. And depending on their athletic history, they may not need to work on everything.
Right.
Maybe they have a background in powerlifting or something because they're just as a hobby,
Yeah.
right? So maybe they're strong enough already. Now we got to get them working on something, the other side of that spectrum of
Right.
components of
No matter
fitness.
their age, right? No matter their age, it's really realistic to go, if you're going to serve on the capacity of special operations or law enforcement, it's a real lifestyle and commitment. So if you say, hey, regardless of age, because I typically do, you got to chop out a year. And if
Oh,
they
yeah.
like shy at that, like, I don't know, I don't have time for a year. And you're like, well,
Mm.
that's like the first check is that
Yeah.
you have this willingness to go into that 6, 8, 10, 12-month timeline and prepare. That to me shows a lot about a person.
Oh, sure.
Once you have that assessment, help them create a timeline and give them a good training protocol. If they really get at it and they put the time in, like that for me is very highlighting on their actual intentions.
Oh, sure. That's why one thing I like to see, if I get somebody who comes in and says, "Hey, Stu, I'm 80 pounds overweight. I want to serve. I want to be an Army Ranger." I'm like, "Okay, great. Um, here's what we need to do." And we start going through the process, and and commitment is key, right? You got to be consistent. You got to show up, or if you can't make it to me, be doing it on your own and check in with me each week to let me know how things are going. Hey, I lost 5 pounds, lost 5 pounds, next thing you're down 50 pounds and now you're able to go for a run or, start adding new elements to this journey. But yeah, for many people who are either formerly injured or significantly overweight, you have at least a year of building, rebuilding um, after that injury. And, for some, it might even be a year and a half,
Right.
could even be longer.
For
Right.
sure.
So, but you're right. How they look at you whenever you say that, that speaks volumes because, the person could say, all right, I'm down. I can do this. Right.
Yeah.
Or, it gives you like, what?
They find all sorts of excuses why that's not going to work. Like, I know I got to work and do these things. And I'm like, okay, let's have the conversation to that too. Cause like there's that, what I see a lot of times too is, and you probably do as well, for whatever reason, there's this initial surge of excitement to go do this thing. And
Yes.
that surge of excitement immediately is sort of dismantled by a credible timeline and a conversation about what we're seeing through our experience. Like,
And truth.
yeah. So I think that that's like the biggest thing that we see is, and I think that with maturity over time with me, I don't find any real joy in dismantling someone's desire because I found out people that are really committed, they're their own hardest critic.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so I think that if most certainly when you're really, really honest with someone and not just trying to dismantle their gusto, their motivation, and make it seem impendingly impossible or there's no other options, you really get real buy-in by the majority of people because they really appreciate just someone going, man, that was really honest. That was hard to take, but damn, okay, like I want to serve. Like some of them really, I found too, is like someone might come to be like, I want to be a SEAL, but then you share with them like, well, there's Rangers and there's Special Forces and there's PJs and there's other things. They're like, oh shoot, I didn't know there was the Marine Corps had the Marine Raiders are like, well, like when you give them those options in that sense, it almost shifts the momentum even more into their favor.
Yeah, and sometimes just because of circumstances beyond your control, like medical issues, right? I can't tell you how many people have joined the Navy, go to buds, pass all the things, and then they show up at boot camp and they fail the depth perception when they're there, or the color blindness, color
Right.
deficiency, and they decide, yeah, well, I'm not joining the Navy now because I wanted to be a SEAL, and they have to go through a couple of weeks of out processing that, and which isn't fun. But then they come home and they go straight to the Army recruiter, and next thing you know, they're in the 18 X-ray pipeline and going through, SF training or
Right.
Ranger training,
Yep.
and that there's always options like that. And then when we deal with folks that are just older, who might be needing an age waiver type of thing. First of all, we always tell them is, yeah, you might be 32, but you need to be scoring like you're 18,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have a 32 age like range of performance. You need to be beating the 18-year-olds that are
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And I think that that's a critical statement that they may never have heard. I think that's like perfect bullseye right there, Stu. You
Yeah.
having that conversation with saying, listen, like you and I both know that a 32-year-old well-prepared individual that's already in the teams as a SEAL, like that's your ideal SEALs, like
Oh
25,
yeah.
35, right? But there's so much of a steep learning curve for someone at 32 going in, and you're just like, you don't understand how it's not a personal slight. Like it's an understandable thing that our military isn't going to give that much sort of, I guess, leniency to someone that is a bit older, because like by the time like let's say someone goes in 32 and they're all allowed, like by the time you're seeing an operational like SEAL that has all the quals and like
Yeah.
hyper school and all these,
38. Yeah.
yeah, you're like that's 4 or
38.
5 years,
Yeah.
and that's like prime time physical time, and so that's where I would shift to go, like, because I just had someone the other day that was 32, is physically capable, but I had this very like, you got to be in the top 1% legitimately to even get the shot, probably, if at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But I was like, but there's other options. There are other. So is it? Do you want to serve in some sort of capacity of whatever that calling is, or is it, I have to do this thing and I don't want to? That's a different conversation too.
Yeah. My advice to those folks is say, try for the age waiver. Give it all you got. When you get no, ask again to somebody else, right? Somebody might say yes.
Yeah.
And if it happens, great. You're on your way. If it doesn't, there are other options.
Yeah, and then that you're right, because like let's say someone pushes like hell for a year, they score quite well, but somehow they don't get in. Well, now you're physically ready for every other thing.
Anything. Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. Yeah.
So
Because
it's
I
not
mean,
it's
there's
not a loss. Like
yeah.
if you're really putting in the time to prep, if you really are doing it, then you're really at the end of that, you actually have way more options than when you started.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Army Special Forces, Air Force Special Warfare,
Yeah. Yeah, being
um,
on the
I
reserve
mean,
side, right?
federal law enforcement.
Yeah, like that's so like our kind of the conversation I have with the guys, with the older guys, and I just had like with somebody was, it was Bortak is an open. He was from San Diego, so that's wide open. Because if you really want to do high risk warrants, and that's where you really want to be like tactical, like and do some cool stuff, like every state patrol, right? In each
Yeah.
state, that's usually that does a lot of high risk warrant guys. It's like every state has its sort of internal agency, right? That's
Oh yeah.
highly trained, highly equipped, highly skilled. Like here in Alabama, the state patrol have their basically SWAT team that's basically at the call of the governor. When there's like a
Oh
real
yeah.
high risk warrant, it's going to go through the governor here, and same in Virginia,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
think about what they have there. They have breachers. They have snipers.
yeah,
They have. I mean, they're working it.
They are, right? And
all the
that's
time.
down
Yeah.
here, like I've already met a bunch of those guys, and like, and it's not a bunch, right? But it's not that it's not a lot, because really people are kind of unaware of it.
Mm.
And it's not a lot because it's not this big group that is underfunded. They're just highly trained. And so once you get in, people are like, I never heard of SEAL Team 6 until, quite frankly, until like second phase of
Oh,
BUD/S.
wow. Yeah.
I didn't really know. And so until you get inside a lot of times to these agencies and these departments, you don't really know unless you've met someone directly, right?
True.
So there's a lot of options still, I think. And I say that because if someone's authentically wanting to serve, that's really what it takes. Because if they have it, they can prepare for it, and that's their lifestyle now. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of really, really good men and women serving in every state and federal capacities.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the reason why I like the way you kind of went that way is because sometimes your fitness level today will obviously determine a timeline, and that timeline may not be long enough for you to meet that age limit. So therefore, there are other options for you. But let's just for fun, since we're only 15 minutes into this, let's take a guy who comes in, hasn't trained, has very little athletic history. Maybe he's mid 20s, small guy, um, maybe 100, 150 pounds. Okay. Um, when he jumps into the pool, you notice that he can't bob, right? He's not overweight. He just can't bob because he is not dense enough to bob. So his body composition is likely more fat than muscle. It just doesn't look it. He's kind of like skinny fat.
Gotcha.
So that person who wants to serve, what is the start that we would take as coaches to say, all right, we got to get you started with this, going, building this foundation first. What's that foundation look like?
Yeah, for me, I really someone that just needs a little bit of everything, right? For me, I would dose them with a little bit of everything, but also like that's why we're also doing the PST, because if there's a highlighting part that someone really struggles on, like we'll say that becomes a kind of a majority focus, right? And that's, I always say water is the great equalizer, right? It really is, water and fire. Fortunately, we don't have to fight fires, but we are in the water a lot. So when someone too is, I think what the habit oftentimes is that they put so much emphasis into a single side of skill that it actually, they fall into overtraining too quickly. I think that's a thing. And so
that's a good
I would
point.
say make sure that what we do is initially it's like we got to create some consistency in their training so they can not gravitate to what they're better at, but as they figure out like, hey, these are my weaknesses, I need to make sure those need to be my emphasis, right? And again, if pool bobbing or whatever is the weakness, the biggest glaring weakness, I'm not going to attack that, so to speak, by just tons of volume.
Oh yeah,
It has to be some volume, right? Purposeful volume for the aerobic side of it, but there has to be a big component of let's get it become a better, more efficient swimmer.
Oh sure.
And so what ended up happening is, like I say, a swimmer someone that is struggling at swimming, we need to put them into swim practices. So not just side stroke, not just like, it's everything. Like we need this style. We got fins, no fins, all variations, because eventually they just become more comfortable in the water. And that guy, that bob, is really just a mechanism of, they're not aware in the water, and their breathing is probably wonky. Yeah. So having that well-rounded training program, rucking too, it's like rucking is often a miss component because they're running so much mileage. It's like, okay, we don't not want to run a particular amount of miles, but we also don't want to omit rucking. And a lot of people go straight to the 80-pound ruck, and it's like, or 50-pound ruck. You're like, well, okay, just that's also something,
a progression. Yeah.
Up. So I think that maybe a month or two of just well-rounded training, find out really what they're sort of, where we can start creating emphasis on. And then again, there's always running, there's always rucking, there's always swimming, and then there's got to be some resistance training. And
Oh,
it's
sure.
and it's not heavy this or heavy that. It's, and the same thing I say about swimming, it's, you got to have some competence in here, like
Mm.
body awareness, right? Kinesthetic awareness. It's like the pull up is a great asset, but just like, hey, if I can't squat, what am I going to do? Put more weight on the bar? No, there's got to be other ways and forms of getting into that movement pattern. So
Yeah.
having some good variety, but focusing on some of those things. Cause like if he's 150 pounds and not particularly strong, but maybe he ran cross country in high school, he might have an affinity to run more because it's comfortable. So
Yeah,
have
sure.
a conversation to go, okay, let me see what program you're doing or what we're doing. Make sure we space these out. Cause like someone like that, I also like, I don't want them doing 12 weeks of straight hypertrophy and nothing else. Like
Yeah.
that's not a great idea. So having some diversity after we have that good assessment and conversation, that's kind of where I would sit.
Yeah, I like the idea of not focusing on just one element. Some people would look at that probably and say, "Man, you need to put on some muscle mass because you don't you can't bob."
Yeah.
Right? But there's a technique to it. There's training to, just swimming should be a part of your training if swimming is a part of your future. Um, but I would agree. I would probably warm them up with some calisthenics and then start adding dumbbells, start adding weights, right? Mix that in there and then always cool down with some form of cardio where you're focusing on the techniques of swimming. You're focusing on a progressive running program because if you're at 0 miles a week, it doesn't take long to hit your your logical progression
Yep.
each day, um, before you really start overdoing it. The good news is this particular person is pretty light, so they're probably capable of handling a little steeper running progression versus someone who's 50 pounds overweight. Might need to focus more on non-impact. But I've seen light guys get shin splints too. Uh,
Yeah, that's why you just brought up too. We as coaches know that they're probably going to do something. They're going to get shin splints. They're going to get sore this and sore that. And so you front load them ahead of time going, we'd expect this. So when that happens, don't hide it. Don't, because we have
right.
to not work around it, but work through it. So also
Yep.
having communication to go, you should expect to get shin splints and this and like when you're and breathing, but it's not to give them fear. It's to build rapport as a coach.
Yeah. But the beautiful thing as working with beginners is there's the beginner gain, which is whoosh,
Yep.
like it. There's nothing quite like working with a beginner,
Yep.
right? Because it is like boom, like it is near immediate. Within a 4 to 6 week period, a beginner can look like someone who's been training all their life,
Right.
right?
Yep.
It doesn't take long to get to that level.
Yeah.
But
We're
then,
really committed. You're right. You bet.
yeah, we get that beginner to that level. Now we can start playing around with increase in volume, increase in weight, increase in mileage, but once again, a progression that is fairly logical. So,
Yep.
yeah, I like your approach to diversify the training versus say, you need one thing.
Yep.
Let's put on some muscle.
Yep. And the only other thing I would say too is like the big picture thing is there's this, I think this is kind of one of my methodologies is, and this is particular to buds or PJs. Not so much, not the Rangers, but in that side, they're not going to swim quite as much or the SF guys. But a lot of times I think that people, we got to run, swim, ruck, lift some weights, do calisthenics, do all these sort of things. And it's like you cram that into a 5-day or 6-day work week. For me, we tend to extend that out to 10, 12, 13 days because if we have a good timeline, right,
Yeah.
whether it's a year, 2 months, whatever it is, it's like I don't need to condense my training because
Hmm.
if I can maximize each day of training, I'm
Yeah.
not going to get weaker. I'm not going to lose my cardiovascular base. What I'm actually going to do is I allow myself to really stress myself out each day. And each day after it is an allowance for the previous day stretch. Like, that's why, like, one of our methodologies is like, if you're going to be in this resistance training focused portion and it's not running or whatever it is, it's like, well, we're going to stress you out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is way more neurologically.
Sure.
But then we're going to focus maybe a little bit more volume on Thursday, Friday, or have it our rule is every 6 days a full off day or some movement
Sure. Yeah.
focus. Because we all know that like when they get that bug, it's like how many days in a row have you been training? Like 17 days in a row. Like, well, that's why you're probably like really feeling it or hit a big plateau.
Right.
So instead of saying, hey, spacing it out isn't meant to make things easier. Spacing it out gives you times, because if someone is like really getting shin splints, it's like, well, we need to still do the work, but how are we going to put it in? We might omit one of the runs, but we're going to drop in a light ruck, because we get so often that like shin splints show up. We put a 20, 30 pound ruck on somebody and we still have a robust, it's like, wait, it doesn't really hurt my shins as much. Like, okay, yes, because you're the amount of ground, like, so soft sand, your feet spend way more time on the ground. That's the byproduct of soft. So rucksacks, when it's not too heavy, simulates that.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so what we're trying, when you see someone with shin splints, what are they not? They're not bouncy off the ground. And so we kind of meet them where they're at. Instead of having a run on soft sand that's going to stress them out, we say, hey, put 20, 30 pound ruck on, ruck the distance or the time that is going to be tested at buds particularly. It's like, okay,
yeah, sure. That's perfect.
So now we get a simulated stress while forcing them to have more ground force contact, but it allows them to modulate it. So they're not just crushing their shins. And then it's like 2 days later, I'm in the pool. It's like, let's get them in much longer fins. Let's get them working on a frequency instead of just crushing the frequency. Get them in a slower frequency that is, again, simulating something like a ruck. And it's like, we don't want to pull that stress out, because in buds, you're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
So we also want to go, okay, that's part of the mental toughness piece and the structure of it. It's like, we're not going to pull this training away from you, but we're going to ask you to recognize when you're a little bit overloaded in training, so we can load you a bit differently and not just remove training entirely.
Yeah, I like that. I always like to, like you said, work through it versus work around it. You know, we even do some things, especially if they're a little heavier. And I want to take a little bit of the impact forces away. We'll do all the cardio with half the impact by doing like brick workouts where it's a hard bike.
Yeah.
And then you go for a mediocre level run or ruck or, walk, to get, to still get the impact forces that you still want without breaking yourself with faster cardio.
Because you've trained like offensive and defensive linemen and prepared them for special operations. Yeah, like
former college level
sort of thing. It's like, we know you can produce force in your sport, but you've never had to run 15, 18, 25, 30 miles a week. So it's like these guys scratch their head and you're like, man, I'm not weak. And you're like, I know this is not a test of that. It's just a different sort of management. Like, your nervous system hasn't conditioned to that. And so when you give them something different and their body adapts to it, like, it's like when you break a bone, you're not going to break it in the same place. It's strong. You might break it somewhere else, but once you condition these people the way that their body can adapt to it, it gives them so much more confidence too for the actual selection.
Yeah.
Work through it.
Yeah. And they find that the things that they've avoided for years because they just weren't good at them, they're now starting to get good at them.
Yeah.
And actually enjoy them.
Right.
Yeah. I would say my own
offensive linemen easily run that mile. It's after like, because we, go from like 260, 280 pounds. They still get down to 220 and they're like, dude, you run like a Clydesdale. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're like, I can't believe how great this feels, because they got the strength for a 260 pounder to run. But, when they drop that to 210, 220,
yeah,
they're formidable.
But like I think once or twice, if I'm using the proper word, the superintendent at the Naval Academy was an Admiral Mewborn with an M. Mewborn, does that sound familiar?
I don't know.
His
Might have
son
been a while
was
back ago.
Football at ODU, and same idea. He was an offensive lineman, And that boy, when he dropped his he's a man for sure, but like he was 280 pounds. And when he first saw him years ago, like this was like, 15, 18 years ago. But boy, like before he came in, this is when I owned VHP. It's like he could squat a house. But then like, I was like, listen, you don't even need to come in here but once a week and we kind of, jump in with a group of guys. But like, I just put him on a running protocol and I had him meet with the dietitian. And man, boy, he put the work in. And then like he was just out running everyone when he came back like months later. It was super impressive. So like,
Nice.
that's where I think that when you have the right tools and the right commitment, you can shift these men and women into things that like they didn't even know they were good at it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of time, like you said, and their own heart and commitment. But the beauty of working with people who want to serve is there's a special level of heart that comes with that. There's a level of commitment, willingness to sacrifice and do these jobs, and you know how to get there is just a small portion of it.
Yeah. Right. But
You,
it's super
you,
and it's fun. Like it's super valuable. And like I think that one of the things that probably makes you really successful is that very thing is like you give these men that are truly committed an opportunity to find these strengths they didn't have because you have this program that's laid out, that's consistent, it's cyclic, it's proven, and guys trust that. And like
mm,
that's super important, that trust, like it's
yeah,
super important.
yeah, I would agree. Um, so, where do you want to take this one? We've pretty much talked about a pretty decent spectrum of folks who want to serve.
Yeah.
Um, I will say that, timelines differ. I think probably where people screw up the most is their timeline. Maybe they talk to a recruiter too early
Yeah.
before they have truly prepared themselves because they think, I'll go to MEPS, get this taken care of, and then, start working PSTs. And then they've never even taken a PST before. And
Yeah.
now they're not on their timeline anymore. They
Right.
are on the recruiter's timeline
Yep.
and a ship date that may
It's
not
not
be
yeah,
enough.
I agree. Yeah,
It may
I
not
think
be
that
enough. That's where a majority of people who show up to Bud's prep fail,
yeah.
is because they did not have their own timeline to prepare. They had the recruiter's timeline because they talked to a recruiter long before they even knew what the PST was,
Right.
right? And that the thing is, the
Understanding the
PST,
process is huge. Like they don't get to dip their toe in it, right? You got to commit. And I think
yeah,
that what people don't understand, unless it's changed, is like before you even get to talk to the SEAL, SWIC, whatever diver mentor, you first have to go through the Navy's situation, which is this is no slight towards that. It's just like there are like different waypoints that have to be achieved. And so
sure.
I think you're like that's probably the one thing that you and I've said more than anything else always is don't go see a recruiter until you're ready, until you have those numbers, because then you have far more, I guess, governing or legislative power at that point.
Well, yeah, and there's a difference between how seriously a recruiter or scout team mentor will take you whenever you show up, you crush that PST your first time there. They don't know you've taken it 20 times on your own, right? You show up and you crush it.
Yep.
That speaks volumes. The last thing you want to do is take it for your first time in front of the SEAL mentor. I mean,
Yep.
that is like the worst prep for a job interview that you could do.
Yeah.
I
That's a
mean,
harsh, and I think that there's a certain amount of naivety also that is like, if that's someone's naive enough to go do that,
yeah,
that also for me, I'm like, well, like that's that. I think that that's the kind of point of origin for this conversation too, is like your best chance is to recognize that that first PST, it's going to be stressful if you're really serious about it. And you don't want your first job interview to be one you're totally unprepared for something you really, really want.
yeah. And here's the thing, though. The questions that they're going to ask. It's a 500-yard swim, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, mile and a half run, right? That's your job interview questions.
Yeah.
How do you do on them? You
Yep.
got to answer them. And if you've never taken them before on your own multiple times and actually trained for it and, got to optimal numbers, I mean, no one's going to take you seriously.
Right.
You call the recruiter, they're not going to call you back. You go in there and crush it on day one. Guess what happens?
They're calling you
Recruiter
that.
calls you. They call you up and say, "Hey, we got a ship date coming up
Yeah.
here. You ready to take it?"
Yep.
Right? They
Happened
take you seriously.
the very first class that we formally did, Captain and I here, we're on, I guess, about to do number 14, but class number 1, we had he's now a SEAL.
Oh, cool.
And he's from Minnesota, and he was super well prepared, not just because of our training, but he was really well prepared before he came to see us, right? Which makes our job even better, more easy. But he went and took his first PST, and they give the same sort of blanket statement, like, hey, it's probably going to be a couple months because here's the process of MEPS and blah, 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 blah. Which you don't want to like overpromise, and then they don't but you're like, hey, here's kind of the typical timeline of someone who gets a contract. And so he crushed, just destroyed the PST, just like you said. And he shipped out. They called him that next afternoon because like the draft happened within those couple days or whatever it was. And people inevitably failed the PST that were supposed to go. So he was in the Navy 17 days later.
Yep.
Because they're like, hey, would you willing to go? He's like, yep, sure will. Now, as a new guy, he got breacher and comms.
Nice.
So it's like that. It's like right now is the ideal time for people to be ready.
Yeah.
It just is. Like when you're really, really ready. I'll steal this quote from my buddy Dan Corbett, his former SEAL. He's like, when you're really, really good and really, really ready, you are undeniable.
Yeah. And
True.
opportunities show up.
Yeah.
For when you're ready, you have so many various opportunities that show up,
Yep.
and they're great ones.
Yep.
That if you weren't ready, it wouldn't be available.
Right. And I think that, so regardless of age and regardless of this, like, I think that, the summary is really cool. It's pretty standard for me. And it's regardless of all these sort of things, like if you're honest with yourself, you create a reasonable timeline based on your strengths and weaknesses. You fall into a good program that you can consistently shift around or maintain because it's been written by someone or managed by someone that has your best interests in mind. And if you put the time in, the effort in, you're going to have a lot of options and opportunities. Even if the initial thing, like, I want to do this thing, but it's like life circumstances didn't work out for this thing because of whatever, but you see so many other doors. Like I'm sure probably with you, like, a lot of guys have all this intent. And like, how many people shift to law enforcement and firefighting or whatever? Or that's what I see is the people that are ready, regardless of age and regardless of whatever training ability. Once they get there, they may not all be SEALs, but it seems like almost all of them will serve on a capacity of service.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I think where most people mess up when they start this journey down a life of service, military, law enforcement, firefighter, is they don't realize everybody who comes into this journey has a list of strengths and weaknesses, regardless of who that person is. Because you could be an endurance athlete, have a strength weakness. You could be a strength athlete, have an endurance weakness. You can be an untrained athlete and need to work it all, right? You could be a land athlete, need to learn how to swim. Doesn't matter. We're all going to have a certain level of weakness to it, and you don't know what that is if you're not assessing yourself.
Yep.
So number one rule, assess yourself, then there's no guessing. And then from there, focus. I always like this. Focus on your weakness primarily. Maintain your strengths secondarily. And then by the end of any cycle that you're on, you're going to be ready and be what we call the tactical athlete who's good at everything and ready to take on any level selection that's out there.
Yep. And then there's the anomaly, and this is maybe the whole other can of worms, is this. And I know you've got it. You've seen these guys too. literally, like, we've had a high school football All-American from California. No physical weaknesses. But mentally, they've always been told they're the best and the best and the best. And when they show up to selection, they are not treated that way, and it destroys them emotionally.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you've never failed, if you're
Yeah.
one of those athletes who've just been the best in your hometown all your life,
Yeah.
in every level, failing is something you are not familiar with.
Yes.
You know, unless you've had a really good coach
Right.
that
Yeah.
made you fail every single day at practice and showed you your weakness and where you screwed something up, and you learned how to take negative feedback.
Yep.
If you don't know how to do that, yeah.
Yeah. We had exactly that case. Like, we had someone that was a high school football All-American from California. Bud's, he just crushed him. He was a E1, E2 as a mess specialist, a food, like, on a carrier in San Diego or in Virginia Beach. I met him at jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
High character kid, but he really it humbled him.
Damn.
He just secured Hell Week.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Nice. Went back.
Yes.
Always like to hear the
my
comeback
statement
stories.
is, like, you could be the stellar human, and Buds or SF could humble you.
Oh, yeah.
If it doesn't, then that's like, that person is like, I can't help that person. But it, like, probably for you, like, I know you were a really good athlete, and so was I. But Buds and SQT and the workups and that lifestyle, it straightens you out. Like, it gets you into play. Like, these are the population of guys I want to work hard for and with.
Yeah.
But it also goes, like, you're not the alpha.
You know what's funny is that, yes, you go to Buds, you're like a freshman again, and it humbles you. And then you graduate Buds, you get a little cocky. And then you show up in SQT and it humbles you again.
Yes.
And then you get a little cocky after you get your trident and everything, and you're at your team, and boom, it humbles you again.
Yeah.
So just be aware that there are levels of growth that never stop.
Yes.
Every layer is going to humble. I bet the same thing happened to you when you go from the teens to green team.
Oh boy. Yeah. In a way, though, like, it certainly does, and, like, it's one of those things that it's understandable that each one of those phases, people don't want to, like, kind of pause their life and go on, like, sniper school, breaching school, all those levels of education you get. Like, you're a student again.
Yeah.
You got to perform, and it's good. It's really, really good. But it's also one of those things that, like, don't be naive to think that you never have something to not learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's the thing I tell people is, like, and that's what you see, like, young teen guys, like, there's so much energy and vigor those first couple of years. If you don't learn how to, like, keep work at work and be able to down regulate at home, like, it doesn't matter how prepared you are. It doesn't matter what your age is. It's going to, like, it'll catch up to you. You know what I mean? So that's a whole other animal, but, like, that's the story, is someone that's well prepared. Surround yourself with people that have your best interest in mind. And, like, that's what I see about the community is so much achievement to be had, right? Stay focused. And it's, quite frankly, it's the only place on the planet that you can learn those very skills.
Yeah.
So enjoy it. Enjoy it if you can. Enjoy it, right?
And, first, and I like to just close this up, Jeff, and just say, if you're thinking about service, thanks. Thanks for even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And now, just email, text us, whichever way you want to get in touch with us, and we can show you a path on how to achieve that. And whatever that is, and your commitment matters. So we honor you for committing to this journey of service and endless growth, like you said.
Yeah. And when I think too is, it's really, and I know you feel the same way, as to that point, is when someone comes to your door, so to speak, and says, Stu, I want to be trained by you. And you're almost looking in a mirror at some point. Some people are like, whoa.
Oh,
Like,
every day.
all right,
Yeah.
like this is like, and it's funny because like no matter what's going on in the world with politics or this or that, like to see those men walk through the door and still want to serve and be like, this is remarkable. So
Oh, yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. It's like, it's a real pleasure to work with those type of people because most of the time it's like teaching them how to use the brakes because they already got the gas pedal figured out.
Oh, yeah. I call it pulling the reins. I got to pull the reins on these horses,
Yeah.
because they're
So,
just doing too much.
yeah. But
Yeah.
that's what happens with these people. They're like, hey, if you're untrained, but you fall into that right training protocol, at some point you're gonna have to get the reins pulled on you because you're ready. You're gonna do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what we tell people. Like with or without us, you're probably gonna find a way.
Oh, sure.
With our
Absolutely.
help, you're definitely gonna find a way much quicker. So
Yeah.
other
And
things come
might
out.
save yourself some injury while you're at it.
True. Yep. Truth. Yeah. So.
All right, Jeff, where can they find you over there?
Well, social media is kind of our bulletin board, Jeff CSCS. Our website is performancefirstus.com. We also have a YouTube channel. I'm sure it's Performance First. It's easy to
Yep.
find, but that's it. It's nice that we have social media to be our little bulletin board. It's way easier than putting ads in a newspaper.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so that's pretty easy to track down. And like I said, if you're committed, we're committed to helping you, but we're also gonna we're going to ask that you show commitment before I put a whole bunch of time and effort into you.
Oh, sure. And you're in Alabama. Where are you in Alabama?
We are in a very small town just outside of a little town called Banks, Alabama, but our closest city is called Troy.
Oh, yeah.
We're 90 minutes from Fort Benning. We're 2 hours from Maxwell Air Force Base, and we're about 45 minutes from the helicopter base. It's basically where all Army helicopter, all Army helicopters, and like basically their Top Gun, their attack helicopter school is here.
Nice.
Fort Rucker. There we go, Fort Rucker.
Yeah.
So we're kind of right in the hotbed of Army Special Operations, and it's quiet, it's very green, and we're ready to train.
I love it. I grew up for a couple of years in Alabama. Actually learned how to fish in Alabama, close to Huntsville.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Huntsville,
So that's
Alabama, like
3 hours north of us.
I learned how to fish in the Gunnersville Dam area.
That's beautiful up there.
Big lake up there. Yeah.
The top third. It's a very vertical state. The top third is like Birmingham, Huntsville. The middle third is Montgomery, the capital. And the lower third, everyone here calls it LA, Lower Alabama. So that's that. We're in the lower. We're 2 hours from the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, yep. So it's very country, but the weather patterns here are very different than Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you found a new home. That's awesome for you.
We'll do this,
Catherine.
for sure, Stu.
Absolutely. Let's do it again. And everybody, thanks for listening. And you can find Jeff at performancefirstus.com. You find me, StuSmithFitness.com. Send us some questions. We're happy to answer them. See ya.